You know what's
Here we
better
are.
than space? Space in the future. Or do you prefer the future set in space? We're going old school with a futuristic retro twist. In today's episode of the Second Print Comics podcast, I'm Remso W. Martinez. Wouldn't be right without the miraculous Mr. Marc Claire. Mark, do you prefer stuff set in the future or stuff set in space or stuff set in the future in space?
I'm more of a stuff set in the ancient past, underground kind of guy. So this is like the exact opposite of my normal wheelhouse. But as you sort of referenced, we are going to be looking today at a story that you might think is going to be familiar to you. You might think the characters are going to be familiar to you because we're going to be looking at an old Guardians of the Galaxy story from the 90s. However, you will quickly find, as I quickly found, that these are not the Guardians of the Galaxy you know and or love from today.
Nah, this is some weird get away with whatever you want to write shit, if I'm being honest.
Yes. And with that, that concludes our review of Guardians of the Galaxy Homecoming. Good night, everybody. Now, there's a reason we're going to be looking at this particular obscure little story from the 1990s. That is because we have a benefactor here at Second Print Comics. He is our highest level possible patron that has ever existed in the history of possible patrons.
He's our sugar daddy.
His name is Jeffrey. He is a Kirby Club member. He's actually higher than a Kirby Club member, but he's actually at the Infinity Gauntlet level. But for Kirby Club, which I believe was it 40 a month? I can't even keep track. I think it's $40 a month. A hell of a deal.
That.
Or maybe it's 50.
What do we know
I can't
about
even keep
numbers?
track. You can find out by going to patreon.com/secondprintpod, where our amazing patrons help fund this program so that we can show up here and talk obscure comics every week or so here on SPC. But Jeffrey did task us with, well, you know what? Why should I talk about it? You already talked to him about it. So why don't we take a minute and dip back in time, or is it the future? I can't even keep track, to your little chat, setting this up with Jeffrey.
All right, bringing to you today's episode, we have our fantastic, mysterious producer, simply known as Jeffrey. He's broadcasting from a mysterious location in the middle of Asia. So the fact that we're able to hear his voice is a gift that many of you underappreciate and don't value, and therefore it's only a matter of time until he just decides to go into hiding, and then he'll only have to talk to us through his Asian handler Amelia, who I don't know if she really works for him or if she's like a robot, but she creeps me out. Either way, he's bringing you today's episode featuring the classic Guardians of the Galaxy. Jeffrey, where are you really?
I'm currently broadcasting from a bar bathroom that I didn't know existed up until 15 minutes ago.
International man of mystery.
Yes, even though I frequented this bar for several years, I had no idea this bathroom existed until I asked the bartender if there was this quiet place I could try and record a Zoom meeting from. And he's like, yes, as actually there is. It's just past the pool tables. To which I responded, you have pool tables?
Well, Jeffrey, we are covering the OG Guardians of the Galaxy issues 17 through 20, the Homecoming arc. We went ahead and we actually had you toss a couple stories at us, and from there we allowed our patrons, which you can join today as little as $5 at patreon.com/secondprintpod. We allowed you to actually vote on some stuff, and you had some heavy contenders, but this one was cool for two reasons. One, it had the overwhelming vote, but two, we've never actually done a Guardians of the Galaxy book on SPC, so this checks that off. One, we tested democracy and it hasn't failed us yet, and two, we actually get to do Guardians. But you didn't go ahead and pick out something with the current crowd, the MCU crowd that has really bled their way into the books. You went far, far back. So let's go ahead and take it from the top. Why this book, and what jumps out about this specific story?
Well, I'm a little bit older than you, and it's unfortunate Mark couldn't join us because I'm sure he would also have memories of these things that exist back in the black and white days.
He remembered Alexander Graham Bell creating the phone, so probably.
Yes, he also created wax cylinders that would play music. But
I have one of those for $5, and I actually found the machine to play it. And when I played it backwards, you actually hear someone screaming, "Help me!"
Oh wow!
Yeah, I got it at a store at a mall. That's a whole other thing, though.
Yeah, but no, back in the day, stores like Walmart would actually have sections devoted to comic books and like cards and all this other, all that good stuff. And they would always have these like prepackaged like packs of like a complete storyline of series or something like that. And in my day, those were all, when you were trying to convince your parents to buy you something, that was always like the golden egg, you know, screw like a single issue or something. No, no, no. Just go and find something that looks slightly interesting and has a complete run, in a clamshell pack, and bring it to them. And so this was one of those. I distinctly remember I got it at the Walmart on 103rd Street in Jacksonville, Florida. And, obviously it starts in the middle of a run, so you have no idea who any of the characters are. But I just remember, I ate everything up back in the day, as opposed to, like, I don't know, revisiting it today and you realize, wow, but, it's just good, dumb fun,
We're fans of good, dumb fun here.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, as I said, when I pitched originally I pitched that New Warriors storyline to you. And then I was thinking about it. I was like, well, because I actually went and reread it. And it's like, maybe I should give them more options. And that's when I came up with the idea of just pitching several of these storylines that I remembered reading and loving as a kid. And that was one of them, which I reread a couple of years ago, this one. And, I mean, what's not to love about a storyline that introduces a cat man whose superpower is shooting his fingernails? I mean, come on.
What really caught me about this is just like it. And I mean, you look at what I consider the pre-cool Batman period, because let's be honest here. Before The Dark Knight Returns, Batman was stagnant. He wasn't as cool. I mean, the foundation was there, but it wasn't until Frank Miller's Batman began to really bleed into everything else that he became really cool. So I call it the Frank Miller rule. Is it cool before somebody comes in, or is it only cool after somebody comes in? Now, I only really read Guardians books because I was reading the Annihilation series in like 2006 to 2008. Nova was one of my favorites. Silver Surfer, Peter Quill, Star-Lord. It was different. Super Skrull. I'm a big Super Skrull fan. He wasn't part of the Guardians, but he was part of that Annihilation storyline.
Yeah.
And Ronan the Accuser.
Great series.
Yeah, great series. That was really my only interaction with those characters. That's why I was more familiar with them when they jumped into the MCU, and that was the cast. Now, knowing that, I also knew that they were not the original Guardians of the Galaxy. This, we're dealing with a different tone, a different set of characters. Reading this, I have to remember, it's like, this is what you needed to build eventually the Guardians of the Galaxy we know today. So sometimes when you read, especially an ensemble book where you're already familiar with a certain cast and you're going back to this, it's hard to judge. But I mean, I enjoyed it just for what it was. I think Marvel really does not get enough credit for having really cool cosmic space books. And they seem to come and be really cool for a little bit, and then they kind of disappear. Like, there were a whole bunch of post-Annihilation books like Realm of Kings and the Black Mirror and stuff like that, but none of them really stuck. So going back and just reading something where it was just supposed to be sci-fi, corny, fun goodness, it's just, it gets me remembering. It's like, we should be thankful that we have stories like this, because they still are good 20, 30, 40 years later. I can't say that about a lot of books that have come out in the last 10 years. So reading this, especially since one of the older books I've looked at more recently, I certainly enjoyed it, and I hope our listeners will too. Yeah.
And of course, it does feature Yondu in his original incarnation.
That kind of freaked me out, because he's totally different.
Yeah. He's an honorable warrior, as opposed to, just a, pirate. And that most of the characters in this run of Guardians of Galaxies are characters who appear as Ravagers. And the Guardians of the Galaxy 2.
I almost forget that post-credit scene that I feel really never led up to anything, because in the post-credit scene for Guardians 2, you see Stallone, you see a few of the other guys, and that is the original Guardians team.
Yes, as opposed to what they're presented as in the movie as, the Ravagers, which are a completely different thing. And if I recall correctly, I believe the Ravagers were an opponent of the original Guardians of the Galaxy. So
yeah,
it's sort of spun that around on its head. But yeah, like that, was it Charlie 57, right?
Charlie 57. You had everybody, but
he's the big black dude.
I'm trying to remember. And, you have Vance, who was going by something else. He was like, I don't know if he came later, but he was like he had like Captain America's shield. At one point, he was a time traveler.
You know who that guy is, don't you?
That's Justice.
It's good old Marvel Boy.
That's okay. So was he Marvel Boy and then Justice and then?
Yeah, he was, and actually, the New Warriors storyline I was going to have you read involves him going to trial for the murder of his stepfather, and
that leads to his divorce of like Starfire and stuff. Oh, I'm always so confused about his character.
Well, no. I mean,
they already divorced.
Well, see, the Guardians of the Galaxy stuff happened before the New Warriors stuff.
Yeah.
But he was Marvel Boy with the New Warriors. Then that happened. Then he went to prison for a while. Then when he got out of prison, that's when he became Justice. But that's all after the point in time where they sent him back in time, or they sent him into the future, and he became a part of the Guardians of the Galaxy. So, is it the same guy? Is it a different guy? Who knows? All I know is that later on he gets a bandana, and it's just,
that's some because comic shit right there. Well,
yes,
Jeffrey. We're going to go ahead and jump into this. This is 3 episodes, folks. This is Guardians of the Galaxy, issues 17 through 20, the Homecoming run. Go ahead and sit back, relax, and enjoy. Thanks again, Jeffrey.
All right, man. You have a good night, man.
You too.
Yeah, so, I've called people from some pretty strange places before. I've actually never had a conversation with somebody for a podcast while they've been in the restroom. But when you're an international man of mystery such as Jeffrey, you got to get business done where business gets done. And what better place to get business done than the throne room?
Yeah, I was not expecting that at all. So that was very interesting. And like when you're a high roller like Jeffrey, when you can be the top funder of this podcast, I mean, you gotta run with the punches. If you happen to be going on like 30 hours with no sleep, and you happen to be at a bar and you need a business meeting, you pop into the restroom and you talk some fucking future Guardians of the Galaxy. That's what you do.
Gets done.
That's how it happens. That's why he's a baller. So thank you, Jeffrey, for your support and for. Well, should I be thanking him? I'm not sure if I should be thanking him or not. I thank him for his support. I'm not sure if I'm thanking him for sending us on today's journey or not. That remains to be determined.
I think I'm going to go ahead and just, preeminently award this probably the oddest book we've ever encountered on this show. Previously, I think the title for weirdest book went to the Black Panther episode we covered, where the Black Panther is part of the Fantastic Four.
Oh, with the golden frog,
with the golden
time
frog,
traveling dimension hopping
and the
frog?
zombies and the Skrulls.
That was fun weird though.
That was fun weird.
Yeah, this is a different kind of weird, but
this is weird.
And like, well, why don't we just start with the basics? What was your familiarity just with Guardians of the Galaxy overall? Because for me, this was not a group or team ever on my radar growing up. In fact, maybe I'd loosely heard of them, but I never even really knew I knew Drax from like Infinity Gauntlet and stuff like that, of the current Guardians anyway. But I really knew nothing about these characters, about any of the Guardians iterations until the movie came out. Other than that, I knew they existed. But as we will be discussing today, this really bears no semblance to that at all. So what was your familiarity with any of the Guardians properties coming into this?
Nothing really prior to the Annihilation run from 2007 through 2009. Had Super Skrull, Silver Surfer, Star-Lord, Drax, all the typical spacefaring characters. And that was
the
about
team?
it.
The Super Skrull was part of the team?
Well, no, I mean, it was Annihilation was this big event in which who's the guy from the
Annihilus.
Zone? Annihilus basically came out and was going to go ahead and, you know, conquer the universe. And later there would be an Ultron arc where Ultron basically is about to do the same thing. So it was through Annihilation, and then through the sequel, I think it was Annihilation Conquest, in which the Guardians formed. So that was about it for me. I remember seeing like old, you know, sketches of Rocket Raccoon, because they were going to bring Rocket Raccoon back. And I had heard that Rocket Raccoon had basically been like lost in the Marvel mythos for like 30, 40 years. But you know, I never ventured back. You know, my same criticism goes to DC. I've never really been into like space oriented comics. My stuff is usually in the horror realm. You know, I like the occult and the obscure, those types of things. I like to stay earthbound, really. So while I did know that there was a Guardians of the Galaxy team prior to the one nation, I wasn't really interested. I mean, we're not talking B-list characters. Iron Man, respectively, Iron Man until 2008 was a B-list hero. Okay, you got your A-listers, you got your B-listers. I would put, you know, some people might disagree with me. I would put Daredevil kind of as a C-lister. The Guardians were D level. Like, they were so D level. Like, you have to be a super Marvel nerd to really care about any of these people. And I was just not there. And I used to pick up Lee Falk's The Phantom comics growing up that were in black and white and reprinted from the 50s. Okay. I'm into obscure. This was a bit much for me.
Right. Well, why delay it any further then? Let's jump right in to this story we're going to be looking at. And we're going to do this probably a little more recap style than panel by panel, since it's about 4 issues we're looking at here. But it's Guardians of the Galaxy, for your reference. Before I tell you this, before I tell everybody what to read, it's Guardians of the Galaxy 17 to 20, of course, for the original 90s Guardians of the Galaxy run. May I take a moment to complain about something, Remso?
Please, complain.
This is not the first time I've had to complain, and it's such a good value that it's hard to complain much about the Marvel Unlimited app, but I'm going to complain anyway.
Snap.
It's a double complaint, actually. Remember the random Marvel Comics button?
Rest in peace.
Rest in peace, random Marvel Comics button. So recently, I bought a new iPad. As many of you know, I used to do a podcast called the Random Marvel Comics Podcast. By many of you, I mean just our patrons. It was a patron-only podcast. So Marvel had this really cool app. You go in, you press this little button, and it gives you a random comic. So I would hit that button, I would read whatever comic came up and do a little review about it. It was a blast. I loved doing it. It was
beautiful.
Getting thrown into stories like cold that I knew nothing about half the time. It was absolutely phenomenal. Then one day, without explanation or warning, they took that button away. This does tie in. I'm not just re-ranting about this. This ties into my current rant. Then recently, I bought a new iPad. Now, I've been trying to limit my device exposure much. So I intentionally, and I didn't want to spend a lot of money on it, but I needed a new iPad. So I bought an older version of the iPad, maybe like 2 or 3 versions ago, because I'm just using it to read. Like, I just wanted it for my Kindle and like for some comics, some digital stuff. And then that's it. I'm not going to use it for a bunch of stuff, you know? So that seemed like it was sufficient. Kindle works fine. Comixology works fine. Marvel Unlimited.
Fuck you.
Nope. Fuck off. Marvel Unlimited doesn't work on this older version, but it almost does. So first it prompted me to download an older version of Marvel Unlimited. So I did that. I'm like, okay, I'll use an older version, no problem. And when I open this older version, what do I see, Remso? The random Marvel Comics button. It's there on the older version. I got really excited. I thought I hacked around the system. I did not hack. I was so close to just starting this podcast again. I went to press it. It doesn't work. Not only does it doesn't work, the library doesn't load. No comics load. You can't get to any comics. Essentially, this older version, which is the only version I can put on my iPad, does not function anymore, which was really disappointing. So it was quite a wave of emotions. But that's not the end of my upsetness with the Marvel Comics, with the Marvel Unlimited app. It used to be you could go and read the Unlimited comics on the desktop. You could log into Marvel Unlimited, open a comic, and read it. You can't do that anymore. I have tried and tried and tried. I've looked at Reddit threads. Other people have this problem too. You cannot read the comics on a desktop anymore, on a browser. It cannot be done. If anyone's listening and they've been able to do it, please let me know. I cannot figure out any way. I've tried different computers. There's no way to do it. You can't read the comics. So the only way I could read these books was on my iPhone, which as I've ranted to you about, I hate reading comics on my phone. I hate it. But I did it because of Jeffrey and because I love our listeners. So I did it for them and for you. And that's it. That's my rant. Go on.
Mark needs an iPad. Like a new one, folks.
If you want to donate to my real new iPad fund to replace my new old iPad so I can read these comics, you can do so at patreon.com/secondprintpod. Thank you.
Hashtag rest in peace, random Marvel Comics button.
There's got to be a way, man. But I wonder if I downloaded that older version on a newer iPad, if it might work. I'm still going to...
Like a new iPad or like a new old iPad?
A new iPad with older version. I wonder if that's possible.
That's a bit of a stretch.
I'm going to try. Because I've tried to recreate this. I've tried to if I scroll through fast and stop my finger, it's not the same. I end up having to actually choose something, and it just doesn't have the same charm.
Well, let's see if we can get through these 4 issues without, really wondering how much more obscure things can get. We're covering issues 17 through 20, the Homecoming arc. I'm going to be straight with you, Mark.
Be straight.
I don't like this future space stuff where they're dealing with past Earth stuff. I find it weird, and this is one of those things where it's like it works in some ways. It works with like Marvel 2099, and then you've got this. I remember looking at this initially thinking, what if this is somewhat like that? But no, this doesn't take place in the year 2099. This takes place in the 31st century. So for all you canon-minded people out there, just fucking forget about everything you know, because this is just going to kind of move things in a completely different direction.
Although, as we'll see, there are remnants of things we know.
So in the
odd remnants.
Yeah. So in the first 4 pages, we are seeing the Guardians.
Hold on. Before we go further, I want to just read the lineup to you, and listeners at home, tell me if any of these names sound familiar to you. Here is the lineup
one by one
of this Guardians of the Galaxy. Number 1, Charlie 27. Anybody heard of him?
I think I've heard of his cousin, Charlie 23.
Okay. Martin X. I think I actually had heard of Martin X before.
No, and I will later explain why he's my least favorite.
Nikki.
Really? Just getting lazy?
Her name is just Nikki. Essentially our hero, I guess you could say, our titular character, not titular character, but I just like saying that word, titular. It's kind of our protagonist, I guess, if we had to pick one. Vance Astro, what a fucking name that is, who's like fake space Captain America. Yondu. Now, Yondu's one we know.
Yeah, but this is not like, Mary Poppins Yondu.
No,
this is like, Yondu dances with wolves.
Does this Yondu exist in present Marvel Day? And
they replaced him. They replaced him with Michael Rooker Yondu.
Oh, okay. That sounds right.
Kind of like Black Nick Fury, except they don't even explain why he's suddenly like the one from the MCU.
Is Michael Rooker now?
Yeah.
All right. Let's see. My iPad just... this is why I hate reading on my phone. Okay. Alita. You know Alita?
No.
And finally, Starhawk. Starhawk,
I thought was Birdman from Adult Swim.
Yeah, he's none of this stuff.
Name is.
He's not Hawkman. He's not Birdman. He's not Bird Person. He's none of this. He's some other guy.
Yeah.
Who we hardly even see in this, but moving on.
Well, when you see him, he's not even wearing his Starhawk shit. He's like naked astral projection man.
Yeah, everything's weird about this. Anyway, I just want to set up our team. Hold on. I want to try one thing here. No, you haven't heard of any of them. Right?
No.
Before this? Okay, so I'm not even going to do a...
I didn't even realize that Vance Astro was the same character as Justice when I was talking to Jeffrey, and I've liked the New Warriors. That's what made everything so much weirder.
Wait, what? That's the same character?
Yeah.
Hold on.
Yeah.
So, what? Did he get transferred?
Listen, do you want to become an overnight expert in Justice? Because I'll tell you.
All right, Remso, what can you tell me about Justice / Vance Astro?
He's a Jewish superhero.
That's it? You're not going to tell me how he got in the future?
I don't even know how he got in the future. You want to decide what timeline you want?
He's in the future.
That's where things get weirder.
Not only is he in the future, but that would explain the Captain America shield. I guess that's he's in the future. He's covered in adamantium, and whatever. I'm moving on. Tell me about this story, Remso.
Okay. So after a horrible, horrible battle, which the Guardians barely made it out of, one of their allies, Alita, was sacrificed in her battle with their enemy, Malevolence. Malevolence is a descendant of Mephisto, so just keep that in mind.
They do look very similar. That makes sense.
In order to easily beat Malevolence, though, the Guardian Starhawk absorbed Alita's living energy to beat the foe and save himself at the same time. So he's basically a thing where he could be kind of like a bomb sometimes, but also not. I would equate him to being somewhat like Havoc from the X-Men. He can absorb energies and he can also project them out, but his powers don't come from a mutation or anything. It basically they from what I've seen, they kind of make up his shit as they go along. So basically, in order to beat Malevolence, Alita, another energy-based hero, is basically sacrificed by Starhawk so that way he could beat Malevolence, but also get the fuck out of there because Starhawk's also a coward. So upon learning how they were able to defeat them and that Alita, their ally, is dead, quote, dead, the Guardian, Vance Astro, demands that the other Guardians, consisting of Yondu, Martin X, Charlie 27, and Nikki, vote to expel him from the team for his actions, which they all choose to do. Just right there, with very little recap, you're just looking at these characters. I gotta say, they're the most bland-looking superheroes I've ever seen.
I don't care about them at all. That's my
there's very little to get. And Martin X, he's supposed to be, and I'll spoil a little bit of why I don't like him. He's supposed to be like the future, like everyone is beige, everyone is androgynous hero. I think somebody saw the whole Latinx thing coming, and listeners know my thoughts on that bullshit. Martin X actually has to wonder at one point. He goes through like a whole page monologue where he's actually wondering whether he has the right to expel somebody. And it's like, this is a pretty easy decision to, but he's into all this, like postmodern moral relativism bullshit. So he's like, okay, sure. So that right there, you should know that if you don't know if you should expel somebody for killing one of your teammates, you're probably not a good dude, but whatever. The next couple pages 5 through 6, we see the evil Protege and Malevolence. Protege is supposed to be some type of like evil space princess, and I don't really understand what's going on with Protege and Malevolence. I don't know if they're like a couple. I don't know if Malevolence is like Protege's like, servant or something. But
I don't know, but more importantly, I don't care.
Yeah, this is a very strange progressive relationship because I think Protege is actually a child because Protege also has a fucking Skrull slave who was a friend of one of the Guardians.
Who's also seemingly a child.
And
a lot of child stuff here.
Yeah, Protege wants to kill the Guardians because Protege is going on your typical bad guy shit and wants to go ahead and rule the universe, but the Guardians keep getting in her way of that. So she has her she-devil handler girlfriend wife thing, and at one point Malevolence is like, listen, Protege, like we'll be able to find the Guardians and Starhawk, and we'll be able to get through this, my wife. And she's like, don't call me that, motherfucker. I may have added that last part, but basically it's a tumultuous relationship. It kind of reminds me of the relationship between Thanos and Death. Thanos loves Death, but Death does not give a shit about Malevolence. So basically, they're waiting on their spaceship to see how the battle has really ended, where the Guardians are. This takes place like within a day of everything happening, and whether or not they should restart another attack on Starhawk, who they're trying to find after Malevolence defeat. This is some weird shit, especially since one of the captains in Protege's army is a horse person, and I'm not talking like Beta Ray Bill, like cool horse person. That shit's cool. This is just some weird shit. Like, we've seen Marvel Aliens before. They are just like grasping at straws for this. This is Doctor Who level of strange alien shit. So this just kind of highlights how strange the Marvel universe looks, because people often say that the 2099 verse looks too disconnected from the MCU to really be its future. The 31st century is just, let's just go ahead and grab shit and see what sticks. So your thoughts on this whole exchange, because you don't get much from it, except you can kind of see the dynamic is not really great amongst the bad guys.
Yeah, to me, I just, knowing that this is going to go into some other direction and they're going to go back to Earth and go in this whole other thing, I didn't really care to give this too much thought, but I did think like, oh, this is that Mephisto, but they're calling him Malevolence. And it's not even clear, like, are some of these characters like descendants of other characters from our time or not, or is this just another manifestation of Mephisto? But I can raise these questions now with you on a podcast, but the reality is, I just was trying to get through this thing. I brushed. In reality, I was just pushing right through and not really giving a shit.
Yeah, this shit don't matter. This really does not matter to the story, as will some other subplots later. Maybe for Jeffrey, I will continue this on my own for patrons, but like this is a hard pill to swallow. So pages 6 through 12 are pretty run of the mill. Okay. The team returns to Earth after being away in space for 4 years, and they need some R&R because, you know, they've been traveling, they've been fighting. One of their friends just killed their other friend. Shit's been getting really intense. But what they find as they get to Earth is that nothing is the way they kind of left it. Now, Earth in the 31st century is basically somewhat abandoned. It's somewhat decayed because we become a spacefaring species and humans are across the universe. So Earth is kind of abandoned. Think Battlestar Galactica and, you know, if the new one.
Still never seen it.
You've never seen Battlestar Galactica?
No, we had this conversation like once a year.
Oh my gosh.
Your reaction is similar.
Oh my gosh. So say we all.
It's in the category of Firefly now. Like I've tried to start it a couple times.
Did you finish Firefly?
No, I couldn't get past the first episode. It's horrible.
Just skip to the movie Serenity and you'll be fine. No, you won't. You'll be confused.
I won't do that. No,
okay, so anyway,
I'm sorry. Justin Campbell probably hates me now. Half the patrons want to unsubscribe. I tried watching this 3 times. I couldn't get through it. I need a better, compelling. I need another tier.
Christina Hendricks.
Who's that?
Oh my God, you don't know the greatest actress?
I don't know names of people, so like I probably know who she is.
The busty redhead from Mad Men.
No,
you never saw Mad Men.
Never seen it.
Okay,
no.
let's pump the brakes on this. They go back to Earth, and Earth is fucked. Like most of these cities are abandoned. They start off in Sydney, then they head over to the Big Apple, New York City, and they're like, guys, this shit ain't right. It's starting to look like I Am Legend territory. They're like, where are the people? What's going on? You know, they've been just abandoned. Meanwhile, Martin X is back on the ship, and Martin X doesn't know whether he wants to go back to Earth because he knows that humans can be space racist. And this is another reason why I don't like Martin X, because Martin X is like, do I want to go back to this planet that my ancestors came from that's full of so much prejudice and shit?
What is he? Is he a robot?
No, he's an androgynous spaceman.
So what's his connection to... I should stop thinking.
Well, along the line, if you go through his ancestry.com account, he had relatives from North Africa. But
yeah, he says that, but it makes no sense to me because, like, what is he?
Like, he's a space victim. He's a space kid.
But how does he have relatives from North Africa? That's
I don't know.
I'm not expecting you to have the answers.
Between the 21st and 31st century, he found a way to be a victim. And what he's basically saying is that, you know, these humans have never been able to accept aliens and shit. And I'm like, well, no shit, man. Like each time an alien comes to Earth, it tries to eat the planet. Galactus, Thanos, the Skrull Empire. Last I checked, you know what? Racism is wrong. And I have to go ahead and preface with that. But if I'm going to be humanity first, I'm going to be humanity first against all the aliens in outer space that keep coming to Marvel's Earth and trying to eat everyone. That shit just will not stand, man. And Martin X is just there to make everyone feel woke. And for a 90s comic, he's very progressive.
Yeah, well, luckily for us, he takes off. Well, yeah. he's still in these issues, but he's not part of the main story.
He's really fucking irrelevant. So basically, all the other Guardians are like, listen, we should go and try and figure out what's happening. So just right there, what's your take on those pages? We basically know is that Earth kind of looks the same in the 31st century, except when you take into account the abandonedness and destruction.
I mean, it's like every other bad future we see. It's like, cities are destroyed, and there's new gangs of some kind that have arisen to power, and you know, there's nothing because I didn't care about these characters in the first place, because I never saw what their new future Earth was like in the first place. You know, to me, I expected a shitty Earth for them to return to, but I guess they didn't.
Yeah. Well, anyway, next 3 pages, what we see is that the Guardians, as they're walking through Earth, everyone except like Martin X, he just kind of like hangs out there. The Guardians are suddenly attacked by a group of armed men. But as the battle ensues, Martin X, oh yeah, he is there. He realizes that they aren't using deadly force. They're not trying to kill the Guardians. So he actually realizes that they're just defending themselves because the Guardians seem hostile, which I would think if my planet has been raided by aliens so many times. So as Yondu is about to straight up like murder somebody with a freaking mace, which Yondu here looks pretty freaking cool.
Of all the characters here, Yondu is by far the coolest.
He's like a space Indian. He's just awesome.
Yeah, he's the only one I don't actively hate.
Yeah, so Martin X is like, no, Yondu, don't mace him to death. And Yondu's like, well, if you say so, Martin X. Next thing you know, the leader of this group called the Commanders, Taran, walks out, and suddenly we start to see a connection. Taran is an earthbound ally of the Guardians and a friend of Vance Astro, who in previous issues I'm not going to bother going back to read right now, because they recap it, because Marvel used to love their fans. Taran helped Vance Astro on a previous mission where they traveled from the 31st century back to the 20th century to meet the Fantastic Four, Captain America, and then they suddenly came back to the 31st century.
So did Vance Astro become Justice, or did Justice become Vance Astro? Chicken egg.
Anyway, so Taran, who is not a bad guy, starts explaining that most of Earth has been involved in a giant war, and New York City is ground zero. So right there, what you need to know is that, yeah, it's basically like Escape from New York. It's some pretty tough shit.
Escape from every city with Punishers.
So for the remainder of this issue, we're just getting a longer explanation as to what has happened with Earth. So Taran explains that the future has these TVs that can basically put out this gas that paralyzes people. So what it does is it paralyzes them and causes people to basically starve to death. And what that did was that killed off the older generation, because you have these genocidal maniacs called the Punishers, who literally dress like the Punisher and going around massacring people. And it ends up like that movie, The Forever Purge. Like, it's some bad shit. I don't know what legacy Frank Castle left behind, but this is not what I think he really intended. So Taran, like anyone else, asks the Guardians to stay. They take a vote and decide to go ahead and fight with their ragtag allies. But Martin X is like, nah, not my monkeys, not my circus. I'm going to go ahead and check out other planets. So Martin X just
That's
leaves.
what pisses me off about this guy. He's like, yeah, I don't want to do this thing. Instead, I'm just going to go to random other planets. And his whole thing is, I'm going to start a new, like, how could we be the Guardians of the Galaxy if there's only like 7 of us? Like, we need thousands of Guardians of the Galaxy. So I'm going to create a new Galactic Guardians of the Galaxy. And they're like, dude, have you seen what's going on this fucking planet right here? Can we deal with this first?
Let's worry about what's right now in front of us before we worry about your Prius's carbon footprint, Martin X.
Exactly.
I hate him. So that's issue 17. Thoughts on this issue?
Thoughts on this issue are that, now look, I guess this is more for fans of the Guardians. Did they exist already? I mean, someone must have. It got to 17 issues. Someone must have. I'm just like picturing like
this is like a 60 issue run. Like, this is a couple of years.
I'm picturing a 12-year-old kid like excitedly going to his comic shop, like asking for Guardians of the Galaxy number 17, because he just has to figure out what happens with Starhawk and Alita and all this shit. For me, it was just. Yeah, it's for me. I mean, God bless Jeffrey. He's the only reason I would have kept going on this. I mean, because he wants to torture us. I see what he's done, and I
know what you're up to.
It's sick and it's twisted, but I do respect it. Is that he became our sort of lead benefactor so that he could essentially force us to mentally torture ourselves with these stories.
He knows how I feel about the Latinx stuff, and he was like, "Wait till you meet Martin X."
All my Martin X brethren out there.
Let's go start the Galactic Guardians of the Galaxy. So
yeah, he is a progressive. He's like, nope, it's not enough to fix this Earth. We got to go fix the whole fucking galaxy. So that's what I'm gonna do.
I'm sorry, humans, but you're not
one privileged race at a time.
You're not intersectional enough for me. So issue 18 is actually pretty cool on account of the fact that we have 9 pages of just fucking action, and this is where the wokeness goes.
That is the best thing to say about that issue. Yeah, I mean, especially with stuff like this that drags. At least when there's action, it's like, okay, I don't need to read, because some of these in page 17, man, it's just like it's pages and pages of these characters talking about everything. And it's all stuff I partially is our fault. It's because we're coming into the 17 issues in, so we don't know the characters and the stories. But I have a sneaky feeling that even if you had read these 16 issues prior to this, a lot of this would be boring and confusing.
Mark, and just like that, you completely understand the premise of Battlestar Galactica.
Okay, that's not. I don't know if that's the best review I've heard, but
So we get 9 pages of just all out action. We get a little bit of context for this. So all this is taking place in the year 3018 AD. And what we see for just pages and pages of all out action, which is genuinely really fucking cool. It's all that 90s glory of explosions and muscles and pouches that you want. The Punishers and the Guardians with their allies, the Commanders, get into an all out street war as they're literally blowing up buildings and murdering each other, which means that, it's good to see that violence still carries on throughout history and time immemorial. Some other mysterious cat person shows up. And this is what's kind of weird because
with a very original cat-related name of is it Talon?
Yeah, we'll get to that. But I thought cat person, which we'll call it for now, was a chick. And this is another reason.
Originally it did until I think it's the next issue where they refer to themselves as something not that.
So basically what I know now is that not only is the future super woke, but it's full of furries, which I have a fucking problem with.
The woke furry future of the Guardians of the Galaxy. I think we have an episode title, my friends.
I'm not amused of this. So Cat Person appears in a scene by Charlie 27 also fighting the Punishers. But
were there 26 Charlies before Charlie 27?
I hope so. I hope there's a Charlie 100 in the 32nd century.
Oh, God.
They're fighting the Punishers. So Cat Person just appears to appear. We zoom to the Punishers headquarters where we meet their general. He's just this scary mofo called the General who has a skull painted on his tattoo. And he's giving like a typical bad guy talk. Like we were going to crush them.
Did we mention the part where there was this, I think it was Martinex. Martinex like left his files of history on Earth. And then because he realizes like, I think it was Martin X, right? Yeah. Because this is right before he takes off. Yeah, in the last issue, he's like, oh no, there's this Punisher gang. How do they know about the Punisher? Oh, it's because I left my files there. No, actually, I think it was Vance Astro. Actually, it was Vance Astro. Yeah, I think that's in this issue. Yeah, it's Vance Astro. He's like, dude, I left my files that talk about the past there. And he's like, that's...
They found my flash drive.
Right, they found my flash drive with my Punisher pics. And like, so now they know about the Punisher. And now they formed a Punisher tribe. And they're like, dude, you just had like pictures of the Punisher from 30 years ago. You don't need it. You didn't do all this. He's like, no, I did. I'm so ashamed. It's like, dude, stop fucking whining about this, man. Like, oh my God, he's such a bitch. I hate Vance Astro so much.
Yeah.
And I can't wait to hate him more because by the end of this, I hate him way more.
So, we meet the General, scary mofo guy, typical bad guy.
He does look somewhat intimidating, but that's where the compliments end because he's really lame in reality.
Yeah. Page 10, we see Martin X decides to go visit other planets, and he's just going to check up on people. I guess.
By the way, Talon really does look like a chick because the way they do the V, like the V shaped of the costume, and it looks like he has boobs. But then we'll find out he calls himself a gentleman. So,
Talon's gonna get into furry territory really fast. So Martin X goes to go ahead and check the more intersectional victimized planets because the humans aren't entertaining enough for him. And from there, he beams onto this desolate planet called Korg, where he's attacked by some strange crackhead.
Any relation to Korg?
No, because it's spelled differently. It's Courg. So before people are like, "Oh, it's the Korg and the Kragulons and stuff like that," like, no, it's just there. Okay. And he's attacked by a crackhead, and that's about it this issue.
All right, that is it this issue.
So now we go back to Earth. Forget everything about Martin X because it won't matter, okay?
I think I hate it a little less than the first issue. That's about the best thing I can say. Just because there was more action and a little bit less talking. And the Punisher guy kind of looked cool until he had dialogue.
Yeah, well, we still got a few pages left. I'm just saying that we're done with Martin X. Martin X does not matter.
Oh, yeah. The craziest part is coming, actually.
Yeah.
Go on.
So we go back to Earth with the story that matters, okay? We go back to Earth, and this young soldier who's walking alongside Yondu and everyone is cursing, and Yondu's like, you shouldn't be cursing. As soon as he says that, the poor woman gets shot in the fucking face, and Yondu's like, oh, shit. And this causes Yondu to lose his cool, and he starts like straight up murdering the other Punishers nearby. That's when we see the mysterious cat person has broken into the abandoned Sanctum Sanctorum of Doctor Strange in Greenwich Village. And from there, cat person discovers a mysterious floating object inside. And when he, whatever it is, touches it, it activates something. This is probably the only part where I'm like, oh, now I can remotely see some connection. Pages 15 through 19 is just more of a battle. The battle is getting tougher, and at some point, Vance Astro collapses. He's injured, and he's not getting up, and everyone's just like, "Shit, what's happening?"
This is my favorite part when Vance Astro gets shot in the head.
So the Punishers roll in with a freaking tank, and at this point, the Guardians and the Commanders have to retreat. From here, they have this scientist who's like a cyborg person named Nate. Nate is like this super giant dude who's also really smart. So he's a couple contradictions. And Nate is trying to heal Astro, who's essentially in a coma. He's put him in this healing tank, but is finding it difficult to wake him up. From there, a centipede with the cloak of whatever is basically like, hello, my name is Cougar, the Sorcerer Supreme, out of nowhere. And Nate is like, what? And he's like, calm down. I will help you. And it's just like, okay, this is some Rick and Morty shit right there. On the last issue, and then we'll talk about that for a moment. On the last issue, the team is freaking out and they're weakened. They're trying to run away, try and find some place to get off the street. And that's when Cat Lady person, she appears and is like, hey, people who I've been avoiding this entire time, let me help you. Come with me. That's the end of this issue. Let's talk about Centipede Sorcerer Supreme.
Let's talk about Krugar, a.k.a. Centipede Sorcerer Supreme. I will say this. Of everything in this book, this weird.
Was pretty cool.
It was cool. It's cool. Like, I don't get it, but it's cool. I don't know how the Centipede creature became the new Sorcerer Supreme. I don't know if I need to know. I just know that Krugar is fucking crazy looking.
I'm down
and
with shit.
Probably my highlight besides
this
Vance
is
Astro.
So up my alley.
Besides Vance Astro getting shot in the head, this is my highlight of the run here.
Yeah. So,
if nothing else, I mean, it's badass. I kind of want a poster of Krugar on my wall. Like, he looks cool.
I want to see Krugar in an MCU film. I feel like Sam Raimi could pull that shit off.
Sam Raimi's Krugar. Just give him his own movie straight up.
Yeah. So on to issue 19. Starts off with the bad guy, the general. He's kind of pissed off that despite giving his guys a freaking tank, they still haven't taken down the Guardians or the Commanders. And he's going around seeing his soldiers haven't done shit about it. They're complaining. So what he does is he kills one of them in front of the others to make an example of him. So now they're trying to really emphasize that, the general is just really a sadistic guy. He's kind of like Dick Cheney, but of the future. Pages 2 through 7, we get like a whole thing where basically now we learn that Cat Lady isn't a lady, but
as he says,
dude.
The gentleman's name is Talon.
Yeah,
is what he says about himself. So he speaks in the third person and dresses like he does have muscles like a more manly type muscles, but
now
looks
Talon
like
starts looking
too.
like a dude.
Yeah, it's like the art kind of changed on from issue to issue, huh? Maybe Valentino halfway through was like, actually, this is a dude. I'm going to change it.
Maybe Talon is a hermaphrodite. We don't really know.
Did we mention this is written and drawn by the great Jim Valentino, who has done some great work, including Shadowhawk, a book I'm going to be looking at on a
nice.
upcoming Tales from the Fuck It pile. It's going to be making its return for patrons, patreon.com/secondprintpod. This is not Jim Valentino's finest.
No, I wonder if he even liked doing this part. So basically,
I can't imagine he did.
So basically, Talon decides to just start like fucking around of Charlie 27 being rude. So they literally spend 4 issues fighting each other, getting into a stupid fight in the tunnels. Like, it's just some type of weird dick measuring contest that eventually Yondu stops because he's like, listen, we've got more important shit to do, people. From there, Yondu starts being polite to Talon, and then they start getting answers about where they're going. And then from there, before we can actually get the answer, we go back to Nate's lab and we see that Krugar, the new Centipede Sorcerer Supreme, has to go ahead and enlist some help. So who does he go ahead and channel to help bring Vance Astro back? The spirit of the Ancient One, not the Tibetan one, and not
Tilda Swinton or whatever.
Whatever her name is. It's freaking Doctor Strange. And that's about it.
Yeah, that's what I was confused by, because it says is Doctor Strange the new Ancient One?
I didn't think that was a title that passed down.
Neither did I, and I also, this doesn't really look like him, but they act
treat
like he is Doctor Strange. So
they treat him like the wizard Shazam, where it's just like one of those things that you just inherit and then suddenly you change ethnicities. It's kind of freaking weird.
Because he looks Asian and not like Stephen Strange, but they refer to him like he is Doctor. I'm confused by if that's actually supposed to be Strange or if it's supposed to be the Ancient One who they did he inherit the mantle of Doctor Strange? I don't understand it. Krugar is better than all this stuff though.
Yeah. If only we had more of Krugar, which we don't. But speaking of people, we can't tell what's up with them. We have to go ahead and get back to Martin X. So Martin X, time hasn't moved.
Mark and X, that's going to be the name I start going by.
Blah, 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 blah. Martin X is still stuck on the planet with the crackhead. And what we learn is that the planet was evacuated because there was this giant disease, but a bunch of people were forced to stay, and the whole place is now desolate. The last hero here was a guy named Firelord. And
hey, I know him.
You do?
Yeah, you don't know Firelord? I'm not actually joking.
Was he a herald of Galactus?
He was one of the heralds of Galactus. I think the first time we meet Silver Surfer, you know what I'm thinking of? I think we actually Firelord
thing on him
in that weird. Remember that the first part of the Dark Phoenix saga where you don't really get the Dark Phoenix part. Just the Phoenix part.
Oh yeah,
maybe it's just called the Phoenix Saga. Actually, there's the weird part where I believe Firestorm was involved in that with the whole aliens, the Imperial whatever thing. I'm pretty sure that's where we saw Firestar. But I know Firestar from several 90s comics, and he is a past herald of Galactus. I think he came after Silver Surfer in the order of heralds.
Well, the more you know, people.
And apparently he's still slinging around 1,000 years later.
You gotta excuse me.
Oh, now we get a new background. Now we see the flowers.
Now you get a new background, and I got just everything because my apartment is not podcast friendly, especially since I'm doing this from a different laptop.
We're doing it live, friends.
We're doing it live. Be with us in the moment. Be with us in the moment. This is why you need video, so that way you could see me, dealing with a sinus infection. Mark in his underground Ted Kaczynski bunker. Mm-hmm. It's beautiful.
Yes, a good time to remind people, if you're listening on audio, we are doing these on YouTube now. Second Print Comics, pretty easy to find us on YouTube. Check it out if you like seeing us. I don't know why you would, but...
You know who we don't see? We don't see more of Martin X in this one. So we go back to Earth.
Fucking God.
We go ahead and get more information about the virus. So the virus, they think, was actually brought about by the Punishers. They actually think that there might be a connection with that. And what we basically see is that, where they end up getting taken to is the Bronx, which is an underground city. It's still one of the only functional parts of New York City, which I think is scary because if you've ever been to the Bronx, you know that that's not surviving an apocalypse.
No, it is not. I mean, regular Bronx is bad enough as it is.
So as they're trying to figure out, is this virus an alien virus or something else, which is another reason not to trust extraterrestrials, we go ahead and get shifted for several pages. No, we're not going back to Martin X. We're going to see that Alita is alive, which is kind of strange because she's alive but not alive. What ended up happening is that she, being a being of pure energy, was merged with Starhawk's consciousness.
Oh, and one of these situations.
Yeah. And to show that he's not the asshole who sacrificed her to save himself in their fight against malevolence, he reunites her with her dead children, saying that, hey, listen, I didn't want to do this. None of this is my choice. We have been manipulated since the beginning by the god of hawks, the hawk god. And that Starhawk serves this guy, but he's being used not for good means, but for some evil conspiracy regarding hawk gods. That just kind of threw me into a whole different freaking direction because now we know that there's a hawk god out there.
I almost forgot where I was for a minute because, as you know, I've been reading Jeff John's original JSA run, which after about... Yeah, somewhere between the second and third volume, it starts to get pretty Hawkman heavy, and I'm really enjoying the Hawkman stuff. So for a second, I forgot where I was. I was like, "Oh, Hawk Gods, are we in Hawkman world here?" And then I was like, "Oh wait, no, I'm in shitty future Marvel."
It gets weird. It gets weird real fast. But anyway, for the rest of this issue, for the remaining pages, we find that the Punishers find the Commanders and the Guardians in the Bronx, and the Commander. Belle, who was flirting with Charlie 27 throughout this whole thing. She's just kind of here or there for a few panels. Everyone is like, oh my God, how'd the Punishers find us? And then Belle is like, yeah, it's me. I'm a spy. You better go ahead and put your shit down or else I'll kill all of you. But right before the battle starts, we see Nate and a seemingly healed Vance Astro come to save the day. They have the typical hero, I'm on the high ground, standing above everyone to say, look, you think that you're doomed? No, because I'm here.
And they have him kind of cloaked where he's still got the Captain America shield, but you can't like see the rest of his body except for like, for some reason it's like blacked out, which is weird. I don't know if that's supposed to be, well, we'll see in the next issue. We'll see what comes of our friend Vance Astro.
Yeah, so
but he does look pretty cool up there with like Nate and Krugar, just the way they kind of are situated up there and looking all mysterious.
Yeah, he had kind of like a snake plus skin from
like,
Escape from LA.
Did you hear what I just said? Vance Astro, Nate, and Krugar. Like, what? Where am I? This is the fucking future, the space future, friends.
What are your thoughts on this one before we hit the final issue?
You know, at least we had more Krugar, a little more Krugar. So there's that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like, I know it's supposed to be like a big like twist of the insider, but like first of all, the general had already mentioned like my inside man, and then the next, it's just like when they do some inside man like stuff like that, it's got to be like someone we've come to know and care about. It can't be some random character we just found like
it's like that chick.
issue.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, that chick that just showed up. Cool. Like, because I'm not emotionally pulled by this.
Yeah.
You know, I guess the most interesting plot thread is kind of what's going on with Vance Astro and Krugar and like what's going on.
Get up.
So why don't we find out, Remso? Tell me more.
So issue 20 starts with 5 pages of badass action. If there's one thing I got to commend this with, it's definitely the action. And during this, Yondu and the others are like, Vance, you're back. And we can see you like outside of your adamantium suit and everything. What gives, bro? So he's like, listen, I was being poisoned by my adamantium suit. And because of that injury I sustained, it was making everything worse because my skin had not been exposed to oxygen for so long. So the Sorcerer Supreme, Krugar the Centipede, was able to rip off the adamantium suit using his magic and give him an adamantium-laced new garb, which basically looks like any type of like character from that movie, The Warriors.
It looks like really shitty. Yeah, it looks like a warrior dressed up as Captain America cosplay, really shitty version. But not only did Doctor Strange heal him of this dilemma and then rip off the armor with his, not Doctor Strange, Krugar, whatever the fuck, rip off his armor.
Sorcerer Supreme, Krugar.
Sorcerer Supreme, whatever. He also gave him a new name. What is his new name, Remso?
Da, 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 da. He's inspired by Vance's favorite superhero from World War II because Vance is from the past and remembers that shit. He goes now by Major Victory and sports a Captain America-esque costume.
You know, he sucked before, but he looked way cooler as Vance Astro than he does as Major Victory.
This is not the upgrade they thought it was going to be.
This is a big character downgrade from all they did was turn him into like an 80s angry teenager Captain America, which I still this is justice. What?
Yeah.
Oh my God. All right. Go on, Remso, before I quit podcasting.
So
tell me more about Vance Astro.
It just gets disappointing. So
hold on,
the massive fight
continues. I'm gonna do some Marvel wiki shit. I'm gonna do some research
pages.
and then we're gonna come together here.
So 5 freaking pages of just fighting. There's some dialogue, but none of it matters. This is peak 90s. Just give us explosions, violence, muscles, and pouches, okay? At this point, we go back to Alita on page 12 because that conversation apparently just paused in midair from the last time we saw them. Starhawk and the Hawk God conspiracy is making her feel really paranoid. She doesn't trust him to tell the truth and doesn't believe his shit because he killed her. So, yeah. That's about it. They leave us after a couple pages anyway. So now we go ahead and the heroes are able to defeat most of the Punishers because Major Victory and the Sorcerer Supreme Krugar, the best Sorcerer Supreme, go ahead and get into the Punisher base where they see that it was an alien, those green menaces, who created the virus. So that way they can go ahead and kill off all the old people and the Punishers can go off on their crazy teenage genocidal maniac spree. So they go ahead and kill the scientists behind the virus who teamed up with the Punishers. And from there, the commanders go ahead, kill the general, and blow up the entire base. And, as soon as you're like, wow, this is awesome, they take you to a page of Martin X that doesn't fucking matter. And it's not worth explaining.
Like, no, I thought we were done with Martin X. Why? They can't keep getting away with this.
They can't keep getting away with this. So now we get to 3 pages of the commanders and the Guardians celebrating their close victory.
AKA the future space Jets and Sharks. I'm more of a Punisher's guy, to be honest.
Yeah, at this point, Vance Astro goes ahead and says, we should bring on
that's major victory to
major
you.
victory. Brings on Nate, and he's like, listen, Nate, if you're ever tired of just hanging out on this planet, you could be a hero, a guardian of the galaxy. And at that point, Nate is like, nah, I'm cool. So Talon is like, well, what about me? Remember me? Cat person. Meow. I'll join the Guardians. And everyone just kind of accepts it. And that's the end of the story.
All right. Should we talk about the story, or should we take a quick break for me to give you a bio on Vance Astro and how this whole thing comes together and how he is Marvel Boy?
Well, let's go ahead and throw the epilogue, which is just a couple pages.
Yeah. All right. Well,
we see that these mysterious people on this other planet have gone into a future alien fortune teller's place to recover this strange blade. And
these weird fish aliens look pretty cool too.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna lie.
And fish alien fortune teller lady gets her throat slit by this creepy alien lady's claws. And then what we see is that it's a descendant of Wolverine named Rancor, who's obviously up to no shit because she's killing fortune-telling fish alien people, and that's it.
And she says she's going to Earth to find her long-lost ancestor, the man called Wolverine. That's actually an interesting hook, like, especially if I was a kid in the 90s. I'd be like, oh, we're going to get Wolverine because he's probably lived the last 1,000 years. So I almost want to read this next run more than I do this last run we just read. But
suddenly this got really interesting.
Yeah, it got interesting literally on the last page. Nonetheless, you ready for some Vance Astro biopic here?
Let's do it.
All right. Vance Astrovic that was his original name. He was born Vance Astrovic. Here's what I've read a few things while we've been talking here. So I'm going to give you my version of the summary. In the comics, Vance Astrovic, his latent mutant powers were actually activated when he came into contact with his future self, who is Major Victory. Now, the reason he came into contact with his future self is because Major Victory's origin story is that he was an astronaut who was suspended in animation for 1,000 years and then became Vance Astro, and then took on the mantle of Captain America from a time from when he was first born, who was a hero then, and then eventually, as we saw in this historic issue, became Major Victory. Later, but earlier for
really stretching it.
Earlier for Justice, later for Major Victory. Major Victory goes back in time, meets his younger self, Vance Astrovic, because he wants to stop him from going into stasis for 1,000 years. Instead, that encounter activates Vance Astrovic's latent mutant powers, and he becomes Marvel and eventually Justice. So this version doesn't, I think it's a weird time loop thing where he created his own origin kind of thing. But I think this is now a new timeline or whatever, because this current Justice doesn't grow up to become Vance Astro, but his future other self did.
What's it called when you have two things that counter each other? Fuck, it's that Ethan Hawke
contradictions.
Movie. Contradiction, yeah.
Or I know that's not really the word you're looking for. I know what the word
starts with the P. I'm gonna do Ethan Hawke time travel movie because we're so smart. Ethan Hawke
as Vance Astrovic.
Predestination. Fuck, that's not it.
It sounds like it.
What's it called when a guy goes back to kill his own father? But he ends up
like a
paradox.
paradox. Paradox.
Yeah,
that's what you're looking for.
That word.
Yeah, it's one
that
of those.
fun SAT word. Yeah, paradox.
So now it's like, so how does current Marvel Boy exist if he doesn't grow up to become Major Victory and then eventually go into, I don't know. But either way, that's his origin. It's a time loop story.
Damn.
He was also born in Saugerties, New York, in case you were curious.
I needed to know that.
You did. So that's his strange origin. So he's sort of he is the same person, but it's like they're like different versions of each other.
Do you feel better?
It's like a
after learning all this?
Much worse, actually.
Same.
Much worse.
Let's go ahead and jump into some ratings.
All right. Do you want to go first?
I like Jim Valentino, but this is not his best art.
I don't think Jim Valentino would even say it's his best.
I'm giving this a 3 out of 5. And for the story, now, mind you, people are gonna be like, well, they didn't even read the other stuff. They didn't spend hours wikiing the history of Vance Astro.
No, they did not.
You bet your ass I didn't. This story is like funny, but not in like a jokey type of way. It's This is like reading a strange Rick and Morty episode. I'm gonna give it a 3.5 for story. So I'm gonna give it a total score of a 6.5.
Whoa.
This was entertaining. This was as little as I knew about anything. This was entertaining, if nothing else.
All right.
Because we got Krugar, the Sorcerer Supreme.
I mean, that is
century.
Like Krugar alone raises this by like a point, like literally just by himself.
He's the 0.5.
Meanwhile, Martin X brings it down a point. So that all balances itself out there. So that just cancels it out. I'm also going to give the art a 3. It's like just above 90s average. The art's not bad. I don't hate the art in this. It's
the battle scenes are awesome.
It's a little above average 90s stuff. You know, it's Jim Valentino stuff.
Yeah.
It's fine. See, like, how much of the story is because it sucks and how much of it is because I didn't read the first 16 issues? Just kidding. I know the answer.
Did you enjoy it?
No.
Okay.
I didn't. Now,
that's the ultimate deciding factor.
In fairness, I might have not enjoyed it because I was so sour that I was reading it on my phone, which I just hate doing anyway. So I need to figure a way around this issue because maybe it's going to sully all of my Marvel books going forward. That's not true. I was reading some John Byrne Fantastic Four on my phone last week, and I was loving it. So it's I can't just blame the technology.
Now you can read comics that are taking a shit from your phone.
I can't, in good consciousness, give this too high a rating score. I'm giving this rating a 2. What is this? Shout out to Weird Science, baby. It's a fuck you 5. It's not really. Damn. It's just a 5. It's just a regular 5. Fuck you 5 is their thing. But it's a regular 5, homage to Weird Science. But I think this is worthy because I just felt like telling this to fuck off. I felt like telling Vance Astro to fuck off. The two most interesting things about these 4 issues.
Huh?
By far, the two most interesting things about this are Krugar, the Sorcerer Supreme Centipede. That's just awesome.
That is
and
awesome.
The little tease about Wolverine at the end. That almost makes you wonder what's going on if they're going to find future Wolverine. But shouldn't he be Old Man Logan by now? Never mind. We're getting
the
into
31st
timelines.
century, bro. Everyone's got to die eventually.
Yeah. So it's getting a 5 from me. 6.5 from you, which is amazing.
11.5,
which I think we've sort of defined Sunday read category as like a 12 to 16 range. So I think it might fall just below that. Of course, you know, I recommend reading it just because if you've been on this journey through us, I feel like you should have to go through what I went through, and you should have to.
We should all suffer the same.
Yeah, I mean, the art's not bad. This is like 90s Drek, but the story leaves much to be desired. And at the end of the day, there's not a character I care about in this outside of Krugar, who is really just a side character anyway. So what can I say? When the highlight is your protagonist getting shot in the head, I mean, what does that say? I cheered. I was like, yeah, go Punishers.
Yeah, well,
Sharks and Jets.
Do you feel like you could actually continue reading the series?
Like, could with what incentive? If Jeffrey does this every couple of months, Jeffrey just makes us read 4 more issues of this exact run. Yeah, I mean, I guess I could do it because he's paying.
I almost feel like doing what you did with the Ultimate Fantastic Four because you've got that morbid curiosity.
Maybe you should do it.
Maybe I should.
Maybe you should. I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it. I won't do that to myself. Not while I have to read on my phone. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to double harm myself that way. But
well, folks, thank you once again. If you want to be like Jeffrey or any of the other awesome patrons who get to hang out with us, get awesome perks and bonuses as a result of supporting the Second Print Comics community, go ahead and support us right now over at patreon.com/secondprintpod. Mark, anything else?
No, just do that. Pay us money so that this is all worth it. So this is all for something. No, but of course you get all sorts of access, early releases of every episode, sometimes live editions. Now we're starting to do some of these. We did our Wakanda Forever review actually live for our patrons. So patrons can already access that live video stream we did. Yes, we did a belated review of Wakanda Forever. That will be, if I have my timelines correct, because we record these out of order, I think that's next week's episode. Is that correct? That's right.
Yes.
Yeah, it is. Okay. So yes, look forward to our very belated, but very, you know what? I enjoyed doing the review, I think, more than the episode, more than I enjoyed watching the movie. So
that's an understatement.
Yeah, it was a lot shorter, so that was nice. But nonetheless, tune in next week for our Wakanda Forever belated review, or tune in right now, patreon.com/secondprintpod. That's all I got, Remso.
Folks, remember, if there's nothing else you could do this. It's as simple as sweet as ever. It's read comics and change the world.
Like Martin X.
Good night, America.
Adios.
Stay woke.